Your body is keeping a detailed record of every emotional wound you've ever tried to ignore, every moment of stress you've pushed aside, and every feeling you've convinced yourself wasn't important enough to address. This isn't just metaphorical language or spiritual wisdom. It's a biological reality that modern science continues to validate through research in psychoneuroimmunology and trauma studies. When we examine the work of renowned physician and trauma expert Gabor Maté, we discovered that the connection between emotional pain and physical symptoms isn't just possible, it's inevitable. The human body doesn't distinguish between emotional and physical threats in the way our conscious mind does, and this fundamental misunderstanding leads many of us down a path where unprocessed emotional experiences eventually manifest as chronic illness, autoimmune conditions, addiction, and a host of other physical ailments that seem to appear out of nowhere, but actually have deep emotional roots. The stress response system in our body was designed for acute, short-term threats, not the chronic emotional struggles that characterize modern life. When we experience emotional pain, whether from childhood trauma, relationship difficulties, work stress, or societal pressures, our nervous system activates the same physiological responses it would use to escape from a physical predator. The difference is that emotional threats often can't be resolved through fight or flight, leaving our system in a state of chronic activation that gradually wears down our immune system, disrupts our hormonal balance, and creates inflammation throughout our body. This chronic state of activation doesn't just disappear because we've decided to ignore our feelings or convince ourselves that we're fine. Instead, it continues to operate beneath the surface, creating a perfect storm for physical illness to develop over time. Consider how many people you know who seem to have their life together on the surface, but struggle with mysterious health issues that doctors can't fully explain. They might have chronic fatigue, digestive problems, frequent infections, skin conditions, or autoimmune disorders that don't respond well to conventional treatment. These individuals often describe feeling like their body is betraying them, not realizing that their body is actually trying to communicate something important about their emotional state. The body becomes the messenger for emotions that haven't been properly processed, feelings that have been suppressed, and needs that have been consistently ignored. This isn't the body's failure, it's the body's wisdom attempting to get our attention through the only language it knows how to speak when we're not listening to its more subtle signals. The concept of psychosomatic illness has been misunderstood and stigmatized for decades, often dismissed as meaning the symptoms are imaginary or that the person is somehow making themselves sick on purpose. This couldn't be further from the truth. Psychosomatic symptoms are real, measurable, and can be just as debilitating as any purely physical condition. The difference is that their origin lies in the complex interaction between our emotional experience and our physical body, rather than in purely mechanical or infectious causes. When we understand this connection, we can begin to approach healing from a more holistic perspective that addresses both the emotional roots and the physical manifestations of our distress. Childhood experiences play a particularly crucial role in shaping how our body responds to stress throughout our lifetime. Children who grow up in environments where their emotional needs aren't met, where they experience neglect, abuse, or chronic stress, develop nervous systems that are hypervigilant and reactive. These children often learn to suppress their emotions as a survival mechanism, especially if expressing their feelings results in punishment, abandonment, or further trauma. The child's nervous system adapts to this environment by becoming chronically activated, always scanning for threats and never fully relaxing into a state of safety. This adaptation, while necessary for survival in a difficult environment, becomes problematic when it continues into adulthood, creating a foundation for chronic illness and emotional dysregulation.
The immune system is particularly susceptible to the effects of chronic emotional stress, especially when that stress originates in early life experiences. Research has shown that individuals who experience trauma in childhood have higher rates of autoimmune conditions, cancer, heart disease, and other chronic illnesses later in life. This isn't because they're genetically predisposed to these conditions, but because their stress response system has been shaped by early experiences in ways that create ongoing inflammation and immune dysfunction. The body's natural healing mechanisms become compromised when they're constantly dealing with stress hormones and inflammatory responses that were meant to be temporary but have become a permanent feature of the internal landscape. Understanding this connection doesn't mean we should blame ourselves for our physical symptoms or feel guilty about past experiences we couldn't control. Instead, it offers us a pathway toward healing that acknowledges the complexity of human experience and the incredible interconnectedness of our emotional and physical well-being. When we begin to recognize that our symptoms might be carrying important information about our emotional state, we can start to approach healing with curiosity rather than frustration, compassion rather than judgment, and patience rather than desperation for quick fixes that address only the surface level of our distress. The process of healing psychosomatic conditions requires us to develop a new relationship with our emotions, one that honors their intelligence and recognizes their role in our overall health. This means learning to feel our feelings without being overwhelmed by them, to express our needs without fear of rejection, and to set boundaries that protect our emotional well-being. It also means developing the capacity to tolerate discomfort without immediately trying to escape or numb ourselves, skills that many of us were never taught because the adults in our lives were dealing with their own unprocessed emotional pain. One of the most challenging aspects of this healing journey is learning to trust our own experience when it conflicts with external messages about what we should be feeling or how we should be responding to life's challenges. Many people who struggle with psychosomatic symptoms have spent years being told that their feelings are wrong, that they're too sensitive, or that they need to just get over things that happened in the past. These messages, while often well-intentioned, can create additional layers of shame and self-doubt that make it even harder to access and process underlying emotional pain. Learning to validate our own experience becomes a crucial step in the healing process. The workplace environment can be a significant source of chronic stress that contributes to psychosomatic symptoms, particularly for individuals who feel trapped in situations that don't align with their values or authentic self. Many people spend the majority of their waking hours in environments that require them to suppress their natural responses, conform to expectations that feel inauthentic, or tolerate treatment that would be unacceptable in other contexts. The body keeps score of these daily compromises, and over time, the accumulation of small betrayals of the self can manifest as physical symptoms that seem unrelated to work stress but are actually direct expressions of the internal conflict between authenticity and survival.
Relationships also play a crucial role in either supporting or undermining our physical health, depending on whether they provide safety and authenticity or require us to constantly adapt and suppress our true selves. Relationships that demand we abandon our own needs, walk on eggshells, or constantly manage another person's emotions create chronic stress that the body experiences as a threat to survival. Conversely, relationships that offer genuine acceptance, emotional safety, and space for authentic expression can actually help regulate our nervous system and support our physical health. The quality of our relationships isn't just about emotional satisfaction. It's about the fundamental biological need for connection and co-regulation that helps our nervous system return to a state of calm and restoration. Have you ever noticed how certain physical symptoms seem to appear during particularly stressful periods in your life, then mysteriously disappear when the stress resolves? This isn't coincidence. It's your body's way of communicating that something in your emotional or psychological environment needs attention. The timing of physical symptoms often provides important clues about their emotional origins, but we've been trained to see these connections as coincidental rather than meaningful. Learning to pay attention to these patterns can help us understand what our body is trying to tell us and respond more effectively to its messages. Thank you for clicking on this video and joining me here on Not What It Seems, where we explore the deeper connections between our emotional and physical well-being every day.
This channel is dedicated to helping you understand these often overlooked aspects of health and healing, providing you with insights that can transform how you understand your own experience and support your journey toward greater wholeness. The medical system, while excellent at treating acute conditions and emergencies, often struggles with chronic conditions that have emotional or psychological components. This isn't because medical professionals don't care or aren't skilled, but because the system is designed around a mechanical model of the body that doesn't account for the complex interplay between emotions, stress, and physical health. Patients with psychosomatic symptoms often find themselves caught in a frustrating cycle of tests, referrals, and treatments that address symptoms without touching the underlying emotional causes. This can lead to feelings of helplessness and despair, which only add to the stress burden the body is already carrying. The healing journey for psychosomatic conditions often requires a multidisciplinary approach that includes both medical care for physical symptoms and therapeutic support for emotional processing. This might involve working with therapists who specialize in trauma, body-based healing modalities, stress reduction techniques, and gradual lifestyle changes that support emotional well-being. The process is rarely linear, and setbacks are a normal part of the journey rather than signs of failure. Understanding this can help individuals maintain hope and persistence even when progress feels slow or inconsistent.
Addiction is another area where the connection between emotional pain and physical symptoms becomes particularly clear. Substances and behaviors that provide temporary relief from emotional distress can become compulsive when the underlying pain remains unaddressed. The body develops tolerance and dependence, not just because of the chemical properties of substances, but because they're serving a crucial function in managing emotional pain that feels unbearable. Recovery from addiction requires addressing both the physical aspects of dependence and the emotional pain that made the substance or behavior necessary in the first place. The concept of emotional regulation is central to understanding how unprocessed emotions become physical symptoms. When we don't have healthy ways to process and express our emotions, they don't simply disappear. Instead, they get stored in our nervous system and expressed through our body's various systems. Learning emotional regulation skills, such as breathing techniques, mindfulness practices, and somatic awareness, can help us process emotions as they arise rather than allowing them to accumulate and eventually manifest as physical symptoms. These skills are particularly important for individuals who didn't learn them in childhood due to family dynamics or cultural factors. Trauma doesn't have to be dramatic or obvious to have lasting effects on our physical health. Developmental trauma, which occurs when children's basic needs for safety, attunement, and authenticity aren't met, can be just as impactful as more obvious forms of abuse or neglect. Children who grow up feeling like they have to be perfect, who never feel truly seen or understood, or who learn that their emotions are inconvenient or dangerous, develop nervous systems that are chronically activated and bodies that are constantly preparing for threat. This foundation of chronic activation sets the stage for various physical symptoms to develop over time. The nervous system's capacity for healing and rewiring itself, known as neuroplasticity, offers hope for individuals struggling with psychosomatic symptoms. While early experiences shape our nervous system in significant ways, we're not permanently trapped by these patterns. Through conscious effort, therapeutic support, and practices that support nervous system regulation, we can gradually shift from patterns of chronic activation to patterns of greater calm and resilience. This process takes time and patience, but the body's natural capacity for healing is remarkable when given the right conditions and support. Cultural and societal factors also play a role in how we process emotions and whether we develop psychosomatic symptoms.
Cultures that stigmatize emotional expression, that prioritize productivity over well-being, or that don't provide adequate support for individuals dealing with stress and trauma, create environments where people are more likely to suppress their emotions and develop physical symptoms. Understanding these broader influences can help us have compassion for ourselves and others who struggle with these issues, recognizing that individual healing often requires challenging societal norms and expectations.
Sleep disturbances are often one of the first signs that emotional stress is beginning to affect our physical health. When our nervous system is chronically activated by unprocessed emotions, it becomes difficult to achieve the deep, restorative sleep that our body needs for healing and maintenance. Poor sleep then creates additional stress on our system, creating a cycle where emotional distress and physical symptoms reinforce each other. Addressing sleep issues often requires looking at both the physical factors that affect sleep and the emotional factors that keep our nervous system activated even when we're trying to rest. The digestive system is particularly sensitive to emotional stress, which is why many people experience stomach problems, digestive issues, or changes in appetite during stressful periods. The gut is sometimes called the second brain because it contains a vast network of neurons that communicate directly with the brain and nervous system. When we're dealing with chronic emotional stress, this communication network can become dysregulated, leading to various digestive symptoms that might seem unrelated to our emotional state, but are actually direct expressions of our internal stress level. As we near the end of our exploration today, it's important to reflect on how this understanding might change your relationship with your own body and symptoms. Rather than seeing physical symptoms as enemies to be fought or inconveniences to be ignored, we can begin to view them as messengers, carrying important information about our emotional and psychological needs. This shift in perspective doesn't mean we should avoid medical care or ignore serious symptoms, but it does mean we can approach healing with greater curiosity and compassion, recognizing that our body's wisdom often knows what we need before our conscious mind does. The path forward involves developing a more integrated approach to health that honors both the emotional and physical aspects of our experience. This might mean seeking out healthcare providers who understand the mind-body connection, developing practices that support emotional regulation and stress management, and creating life circumstances that align more closely with our authentic needs and values. It also means cultivating patience with the healing process, recognizing that years of suppressed emotions and chronic stress can't be resolved overnight, but that every step toward greater emotional awareness and expression supports our overall health and well-being. The journey toward healing psychosomatic symptoms is ultimately a journey toward greater wholeness and authenticity. When we learn to honor our emotions, express our needs, and create lives that support our well-being, we're not just improving our physical health, we're reclaiming our authentic selves and creating space for the joy, creativity, and connection that make life meaningful. This process requires courage, support, and persistence, but the rewards extend far beyond symptom relief to encompass a more integrated and fulfilling way of being in the world.
Understanding that the pain we ignore now will speak through our body later isn't meant to create fear or shame, but to offer hope and empowerment. When we recognize these connections, we gain the power to address the root causes of our symptoms rather than just managing their effects. We can begin to create lives that honor our emotional needs, support our nervous system's capacity for regulation, and allow our natural healing mechanisms to function as they were designed to do. This is the path toward not just physical health, but toward the kind of integrated well-being that allows us to thrive rather than just survive. If this exploration has resonated with you, I invite you to like this video and consider how these insights might apply to your own experience. Feel free to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below if you feel called to do so, and don't forget to check out the next video that's appearing on your screen. If you found value in this content and want to continue receiving daily insights about the deeper connections between emotional and physical well-being, consider subscribing to the Not What It Seems channel, where we explore these important topics with compassion, curiosity, and practical wisdom for your healing journey.